Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the open session of the Coventry School Committee, and I believe I have 7:01. And would you stand for a pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could remain standing for a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening. You may be seated. And for those of you who are typical members of the audience, I'm sure you have noticed we have a new member on our dais. Mr. Luke Murray was elected in District 2 and is replacing Ann Dixon. District 1. What did I say? Ugh. Can you tell I'm losing it? Good.
She's going on vacation.
It's my district, yeah. In District 1, and we welcome him to the committee. That being said, Mr. Levis, would you be kind enough to do the safety notifications?
Sure. In case of an emergency, there are two exits to your left and right behind you, and go out the doors, and you can exit to the outside either to your left or to your right.
Thank you. And Mr. Pearson, if you would honor us with reading the mission statement for Coventry Public Schools, please.
The Coventry Public Schools, with community partnerships, educate, inspire, and motivate students to be lifelong learners.
Thank you. And just to notify the public, the school committee met in executive session for about 15 minutes previous to this meeting. We discussed homeschool requests for our foreign exchange student, and we approved minutes from our executive session of 2/28/19. Those were all carried unanimously, 5-0, except for the minutes of the executive session where there was a 4-1 abstention because Mr. Murray was not at that meeting. That being said, is there a motion to seal the records of that executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the records of the executive session be kept closed pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the approval of our open meeting minutes from 2/28 and 3/4. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the open meeting from February 28, 2019 to March 4, 2019 as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any abstentions?
Abstention.
Motion carries 4-1 abstention. Moving on to personnel, certified resignations. Mr. Levis, did you want to speak to any of these?
Just when we get to the classified administrator appointment.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the resignation of Judy Alme Couteau?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the resignation of Judy Alme Coutu, reading teacher at Allen Shaw and Feinstein Middle School, effective March 14, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions or concerns from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Bonnie Lemoyne. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the resignation of Bonnie Lemoyne, teacher assistant pre-kindergarten at Washington Oak Elementary School, effective March 1st, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to classified administrator appointments. Did you want to speak to
Sure.
this,
Just
Mr.
briefly,
Levis?
I just want to say first, congratulate Miss Patty Martin, Mrs. Patty Martin. Sorry, Jason. But I think we all know how hard a worker Patty is, and that we've also talked about how we need a data manager in our district and how important data is, and as it translates into performance, but also in accountability, also into our budget. It's so crucial to have accurate data and to be able to understand how we use that data. And so we're very pleased to have Patty as our full-time data manager, and I just want to congratulate her. And I know it'll be a challenge, but I know you're definitely up to the challenge. So thank you for taking it on.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Patty Martin, data manager for the district, effective March 15th, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any further questions or concerns from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Jackie Barnes. She's here. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Jackie Barnes, 7/day confidential accounting clerk/payroll as central office, effective March 18th, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Sarah Kopelman. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Sarah Kopelman, confidential secretary for assistant superintendent/special education at central office, effective April 2nd, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Is she?
I don't.
No,
I've never met Sarah. So.
I haven't either. Okay, moving on to Ellen Malia.
Okay, Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Ellen Malia, 4-day registered nurse, school nurse, support for district, effective March 27, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. I did have one question on that. So that's classified, so is that it's not a nurse teacher, so
No,
it's,
it's- Yes, it's through the SRP.
yeah. I didn't know we had those positions.
Yes.
Is she
Yes, we
here,
do.
Madam Chair?
Okay, is she here? Welcome. Well, congratulations, if you're new. Moving on to coaching appointments. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Peter Hawley, head coach, head girls softball coach at Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School, effective March 14, 2019.
I second the motion.
Hearing, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. So for all of those newly hired and/or people who have moved within their positions, congratulations. Moving on to the public agenda, for those of you who are here, the rest of the agenda items are open for discussion from the public. If a motion is made by this committee before the vote is taken, I will ask for audience questions, and you can comment on those motion, the subject at hand. That being said, we can move on to 7, which is the access to public records policy, which is our second reading. It was our reference 3. I believe we looked at this last time we were here. Are we ready to dispense with the second reading?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to dispense with the second reading of the access to public records policy as presented/amended.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. And are we ready to actually approve the access to public records policy?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the access to public records policy as presented/amended.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the volunteer policy, which is our first reading, our reference number 4. I don't know if anybody wanted to comment on this, Mr. Levis?
Just that we had, I believe the old policy is, it's not there. You don't have the old policy? Okay. All right.
I remember reading it a
Yes.
long time ago.
Well, we'll make sure we submit the old policy before the next meeting.
Yeah.
Because we always like to give you both policies to review and look at. We shared this with our administrators. with our attorney. We had a meeting, and so we made some revisions. Like, again, I would like you to see the old policy with this. So we just want to make sure that we think this holds accountability and clear expectations in terms of being a volunteer in the building. It refers to our current BCI process. But we also want to make sure that volunteers have access to this policy so they understand what the expectations are. Again, I don't know if I'd probably be more comfortable having the old policy put together with this. I don't know how you feel, Mr. Pearson, but just so you can see the
Yeah,
changes in this.
For reference, while I think we should definitely send that to the other members. The old or the current policy, the one we're replacing and we'll
Yep.
rescind after we pass this. The number of that policy is 9040. I don't know if it's online or not, so that may or may not be helpful. Unless you have the big red book
I do have the.
like I do. Every
Mine's
time I talk
white.
about the policy
Mine's
manual,
white.
I have to do this so everyone understands how
You
thick
never
it is.
got one?
So I guess what I'm saying is I think I'd be more comfortable, and again, it's the committee, but I'd be more comfortable if you had the policy so you could see the difference,
agree.
especially, Mr. Murray being new. So I maybe we could table the first reading. I know it puts it off just another meeting, but if we could table this and then make sure that we submit that, so you have both copies when we do the first reading. And we'll make sure we email that to you prior. Is that,
It's up to the members if they want to table something.
well, that's what I'm saying. It's up to them. I'm
Yeah, I'm,
just trying to be
I'd be helpful.
transparent. It's up to you.
Yeah, I'd like to see both side by side.
yep.
So, unless there's some special rush why we need to move
No.
forward with it.
No.
I did find one typo. I don't know if you
I'm
wanted
sure
to.
there is.
Just under the policy section on the first page, second paragraph, Coventry Public Schools, second line, it's a TOL
Yeah.
instead of a 2. You see it?
So,
As soon as you said it, it stuck right out.
Yeah, it says volunteer in any capacity within
Go
schools.
down there. No wonder I'm
Yeah.
not looking.
I don't know why spell check didn't get that. Is there a word TOL? Tool, maybe. So would the committee like to motion to table this?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to table
The first reading?
the first reading of the volunteer policy as presented / amended.
I second.
Sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to number 9, which is the fiscal 20 budget update.
So this is going to be me. We're going to keep Sarah there. So our update, the update is very simple, is that tomorrow, all of our data numbers that the state uses to come up with our state aid is due. We have to sign off. I have to sign off tomorrow. So since we met to go over the budget last time, we've been working on cleaning up the data, looking at specifically free and reduced lunch, our population. We've identified some career tech students who are going to school in other communities but haven't been coded off to Coventry. So we've cleaned that up. So tomorrow we'll sign off. RIDE will then give us our data, our numbers. We have a week to clean that up. And then we'll know where we stand in terms of the how that applies or impacts state aid. And then other variables in terms of enrollment, course selection. We'll have maybe a better idea if we looking at our student population, and maybe some other variables in terms of the budget. So at the next school committee meeting, we'll bring back forth the budget with any modifications or changes. So that's where we are right now. We haven't changed anything in the budget that we presented to you last time, but I wanted to give you an understanding what we've been doing and looking at. And again, tomorrow is the sign-off day. They'll give us the numbers, and then we have a week to go in and if there's any errors that we see to clean that up. So.
I have one question. I'm not sure who can answer this, maybe you, Sarah, or Mr. Levis. In concerning this, it's a little off topic, but I think I can still ask this question because it's about the budget. I read this week, I believe, and was at a meeting last night where it was discussed that several cities and towns were not given the correct state aid because of an incorrect calculation by the the municipal people that do that? Like, so the values of the properties were off? I was just wondering if you could speak to that, and is it at all possible that they owe us money too? No.
So we were on the winning side of that, although that just means that we're short aid this year. So we'll pick up about 122,000 next year. But that was factored in the last formula that was, or formula aid that was given out. There's a separate column that says there's an adjustment there. Some communities had like a $400,000 hit. And that's where people kind of started saying, well, wait, what's going on? If anything, it highlights how volatile the information is that's being used.
Yeah.
To
So how
calculate
did
this,
they
but yeah.
find, who figured it out that it was wrong?
I'm not sure. I mean, they had said that we were going to get a $30,000 adjustment this fiscal year
Yep.
for them miscalculating.
Okay.
Then they rolled that into next year, and then it came out that it was 122,000. So I really don't know what exactly transpired. But that is a separate column in the state aid formula.
And that's what
given
that
out.
means. Do you know how many communities that are affected?
Just looking through, there was probably only a handful of communities, and most of them, but the ones that got hit, a lot of them were much bigger hits than what we had. Yeah.
Cranston it was over 600,000. But
Yeah, yeah.
one of the pieces of the adjustment was also charging for individuals that are in the Rhode Island Training School.
Oh, yeah, I heard
And so
about that.
we weren't charged
Right.
for that, but some districts were charged, communities were charged several $100,000. So that was part of the adjustment that they made, implemented in this
Right, and
adjustment.
I think luckily we're not being charged for that, but I know that there are other communities that are saying, we don't understand why you're charging us that,
All of a
because we
sudden.
don't have that many students in the training program. So I think just in general, we have to tighten up where that data from the state level is coming. Usually they pull it from census and revals that are done at the town. But I know when Bob Tebow's here, he and I went through and we couldn't tie in those valuations from what the state was using to calculate either, so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, were there any other questions or concerns
I
from Mr.
actually
Levis?
have a question. It's not on the agenda, but it has to do with the budget also. Were you able to meet like you were supposed to? It was gonna be you and
On
Dave.
Saturday, it's actually in my report.
is? Okay.
Yeah, for the chairman.
You have it, you
It's
have
there,
a
it's on
report.
there, yes. I don't have much to report, but I will speak to that at that point. So if there are no, did you have something?
Yeah,
Sure.
do we have a sense of where those numbers are going to fall? I mean, is all the data coming in tomorrow, or do we have some sense of?
I think
down from
I
where
think
we
it's
were?
pretty close to what I can let Sarah speak, but I think it's pretty close to what we reported before. We felt like there'd be a couple $100,000, like from what the original projection was. I think we said, what was it, 108,000, and then we figured maybe a reduction of 200.
Is it better than a 1.5?
So-
No, okay.
So on the
Can tell by the look on her
preliminary
face now.
numbers, it was looking lower, which is what I had reported out. Although it's been a little bit of a roller coaster the past about week and a half, because it looked like our numbers dropped significantly, and then
Right,
we
then
went
we-
full court press. We had several meetings this week. We made a lot of calls. I made a lot of calls to different schools to try and get some numbers in. I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen the new run of numbers. That it's usually an upload at 2:00. So tomorrow morning, I'll get an upload of whatever changes have been made through this week. It does not look as bad as what I thought last weekend. I was afraid that the $200,000 reduction wasn't going to be
She was packing her
sufficient.
bags last week. Put it that way.
I wasn't sure what we were going to do.
I'll keep my fingers crossed.
So if you can just wait until tomorrow, I can send out like a preliminary idea. I can put it into the formula. It's definitely won't be set in stone until we do that revision, but I just want to wait and get all of those applications that we entered in today uploaded in, and then I can communicate out what I think it's going to be.
Thank you.
Good, okay. Okay, I guess we can move on to 10, which is the ceiling suspended batting cage bid award, discussion and approval. So that's you?
No.
Oh, no, yeah. Who's the batting cage guy? That's you, Sarah, right? Yeah. Oh, it says 10 on my long agenda, but you know what? Sometimes it doesn't match. Sorry about that. It was the next one for us. Yeah. I should always check the presenter. Yeah.
So in my
Anyway.
report at the last school committee meeting, we had talked about how we were going out to bid for a batting cage inside the middle school gym.
Right.
Currently, they are operating without one, so it's not an overly safe environment when the students are batting, both students, onlookers, and the facility itself. So we did go out to, we issued a bid, it was advertised in the Providence Journal. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting. So in order to bid on that, you must attend that walkthrough so that we can make sure everybody has the same measurements. There was only one vendor who showed up. I do know that they are the vendor that supplies a lot of retail stores that we've gotten other quotes from. And so they came, we did the pre-bid walkthrough. I did touch base with John to get a legal confirmation that we don't need to wait until the 22nd to get a sealed bid, since that was the only vendor that was permitted to bid. So he said that that was fine to move forward. You have the bid enclosed. We had, actually, this was supposed to have come forward last fiscal year. Quotes were obtained, and it never made it up to my office to go out to bid because of the dollar threshold. So that's why we're doing this now, hoping we can get it in before the season really kicks off.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Sarah?
Can I ask a couple?
Yeah, sure.
This is- So I know that you had one bidder. Did you ever reach out to anybody to see why nobody else came to the pre-bid?
So what I did is I sent the bid document out as soon as it was advertised. I could send it out to known retailers that I had obtained quotes from. So I did do that, whether they attended or not. But once you have that pre-bid meeting,
Right.
whether they choose to come or not, it's kind of a moot point. I can say that the quotes that I had gotten before this and that I had seen done last year were higher than
this
this
one, yeah.
amount. So at that point, once it came in lower, it didn't really seem worth it to go back through an extra effort.
No, the only reason I asked is because a lot of times with mandatory pre-bids, especially on this is kind of plug and play item, it's off the shelf batting cage, it's J-Pro, or you can buy it from one of any vendors. I'm just surprised that nobody else would have made the effort to show up. I'm assuming it was publicly advertised the whole bit. So
Yes,
I
it
just
was.
always interested if it was just not worth it, or,
I'm not sure.
I mean, I looked it up, it's $7,500 if you were to buy it through the J-Pro
Correct.
site. We're at
Yes.
less than that with installation, so I
Yes.
don't have a problem.
And J-Pro was one of the ones that we'd received the initial quote from. And actually, when the first quote came in, it was over the $5,000. So I had reached out to them and said, can you do better than this? Because it was over the $5,000. They're the ones that actually put me in touch with NEFS. So I'm not sure if at that point they had said we had already handed it off, because they were really the wholesaler that was going to provide it. So
Okay.
All right. Are we ready to move on this? Okay, that's number 10. Yeah, just read the motion. Just make a
Madam
motion.
Chair, I make a motion that the ceiling suspended batting cage bid award be approved.
I second the motion.
Any further questions from the committee? Anything from the public? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the public's number 10. School accountability rating presentation, which I believe is Mr. Cowett. Did you want to talk, pre-talk, or is it going to be Dawn all the way?
Yeah, I asked, Mr. Coward had been the last few school committee meetings. He had been at the CS4RI, the Computer Science for Rhode Island, had been doing evening sessions, and Mr. Coward had been attending those, so we asked him when he was able to come forward. This was something we reported out probably 2 months ago, maybe, but I wanted him just to give a quick overview. And at the next school committee meeting, the high school will be coming, the administration and maybe some of the educators, and breaking down in terms of what the accountability means for the high school and where they're at and what they're looking to, what they're focusing on to improve that rating for next year. So
I'm still trying to figure out why they don't just average the stars instead of doing it the lowest. You know, that's tough, you know?
That's something that comes up in the presentation.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
So this is a result of No Child Left Behind became ESSA. When ESSA became the new law, then they changed all the regulations. So the Department of Ed had to change how they rated schools in terms of accountability. So a lot of what the built into their system is a result of ESSA requirements.
Right.
I I didn't make any of these slides from scratch. These are all from Department of Ed.
Right.
So anybody in the public
I've seen
can
these,
access
actually.
these slides. I will say that I can speak to it from a position of knowledge in the sense that I've spent some time with the information, but I'm not an expert in terms of I can explain all the metrics behind every single way they calculate scores, other than the fact that it's rooted in the three areas. So area 1 is academic performance, achievement growth, proficiency. Science doesn't count yet. This is basically going to be our RICAS scores and our SAT scores. So that's the accountability piece for academics. Then the student success piece has to do with attendance, essentially. Student absenteeism, teacher, they look at suspension rates, and then they're looking at kids who are exceeding expectations. And then the last piece really is a high school component, which has to do with graduation, proficiency, and diploma plus. Anything that has a star, like this graduate proficiency, diploma plus, and science, is not included this year. It's gonna be coming in future years. Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
What is Diploma Plus?
I don't even know for sure. Because it's one of those things that's coming up, Ryan is really good about saying, we're gonna do this thing at some point, but not telling you what it even is gonna look like. It may be some sort of endorsement, where kids
Probably
get endorsed for certain kinds of CTE or.
pathway
It
endorsements,
could
yeah.
be based on how they perform on assessments, where they get some sort of recognition for performing at a certain level. But I'm not sure yet, and I don't even know if Ryan is sure yet. So the academic measures that are in place now for achievement, we're looking at RICAS, DLM, SAT, growth. And when I presented on RICAS earlier in the year, we talked about how achievement and growth are both part of the equation.
Yep.
For ELL kids, we have the access, and then science. Right now, there's a test called the NGSA. It's for kids in grades 5, 8, and 11. It was given last year as a pilot. It didn't count. They didn't report any data back out to the community, so we don't even know how we did. All we do know is that our experience as educators and students wasn't great. The platform wasn't good. The way the test was presented to them was wonky, and kids were knocked off the platform. So I think RIDE really just looked at that science year as a year to work out the kinks. So there's no data to report on that yet. They're taking it again this year. They promise us it's going to be better. Student success is that middle column. So looking at chronic absenteeism, it includes all kids. You know, it looks at a year, and then the percent of kids who are absent 10 or more days, 10% of the year. So at the end of the year, if they're absent 18 days or more, that's 10% of the year. But we actually, at the school department level, watch that through the whole year. We don't wait until they hit 18 and say, oh, we have a problem. If we've been in session for 40 days, we're looking at 10% of that to see who's on the radar. And we're sending home letters, we're making phone calls, because we don't want any of our students to get to the point where they have 18 days out and nothing has been, no communication's been established. They look at teacher attendance from the previous year, and then they look at suspension rates. And when they look at that, they look at out-of-school suspension to the previous year. And then kids who exceed expectations on the academics in grades 3 through 8 and 11, they look at 2 years worth of data, and then they look at the percentage of kids who earn the top score on the state assessment. So they make that part of student success. And then the last part is really the high school component, which is the readiness. So they're looking at students who graduate. They're looking at a 4, 5, 6 year composite. Kids who graduate in 4 years, 5 years, and 6. High school only, so you're not going to see this part of the accountability on elementary school because we don't have kids graduating. The proficiency, actually is right here, a measure of students demonstrating proficiency until 2021, beginning in 2022, transition to the commissioner's seal. That's sort of what they're talking about, Mr. Pearson, the commissioner's seal. And the diploma plus over here is measures the percent of students who have 1 or more credentials or college credit beginning in 2022. So I should have read my own slide because I would have been able to answer the question. We'll include the seal of biliteracy and pathway endorsement. So this is how they rate this, right? It's 5-star, 4-star, 3, 2, or 1. If you're a 5, you're the strongest performance indicator. Obviously, all the way down to 1 is the lowest performance indicator you can have on the system. So this is what it looks like, and this is a sample that they gave us. So they look at achievement and growth. Sometimes they break achievement and growth into 2 places. In other places, there's a band that goes across. This is none of our optometry schools. This is just a school. So this school got 7 to 9 points of the allotted points in achievement and growth. They got points for the ELL. They got their absenteeism. There's no graduation because it's an elementary school. And then they have 2 or more subgroups that are low performing. So with this particular breakdown, you have 4. 2 at the 4-star level and 2 at the 3-star level. And what happens is, as the slide says, they take you to the weakest indicator. So this is a 3-star school. Everybody see what I'm saying here?
Yep.
No matter what you have in the 4, if you have something at a 3, you have 3-star school. So it goes to the lowest one. Percentage of schools in each area. So 8% of the elementary schools out of all the schools in the state were 5-star schools. Only 5% of the middle schools, only 7% of the high schools, none of the non-traditional configuration schools. Down on this end, you got 7, 16, 21, and 20 as far as 1-star, and then everybody's sort of sitting in the middle of the 3, so it's basically a curve, right? It's the same curve that we see in our classrooms most of the time. So the points are pretty much all sitting in the middle, with a few scoring very high and some scoring low.
Don, what's the non-traditional? Don?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
is
I'm
that-
looking over there, I should be looking over here.
No, it doesn't matter. Is that a charter or?
I'm not
or
necessarily a
not,
charter, but
or
maybe a school
something?
with a different configuration,
Similar to the Met School, like,
right, something like that, I think, yeah. Because we're not one, I don't spend a lot of attention, pay a lot of attention.
No,
to
I
it.
know, I'm just
But
curious what
schools
that's
that have a
considered.
different model. So this is Washington Oaks.
Charters, yeah.
So if you look at Washington Oaks, they're in the 4-star band for academics. They're in the 5-star band for growth, for ELA and math, which is as high as you can be. They don't have any ELL students not enough to fall into this category. They don't have a graduation, and then they have the highest band for kids exceeding expectations for attendance and suspension. So they have 2 5s, 2 4s, so they are a
4-star.
5-star school. Sometimes it goes to the lowest one. This is the high school. The high school's academics fell here in terms of achievement and growth at the 3-star level. Everything else was a 5 for the high school. So it's not like the law of averages. It doesn't work that way. So even though they have 3 areas that are in the 5-star band, because they have 1 in the 3-star band, they're a 3-star school. In our town, we had 1 4-star school, which was Washington Oak. The rest were all 3.
Can I just add to the high school? I think what's significant is that there were no subgroups that were low performing. And that's the other piece that we'll be talking about at a future meeting about. We've identified different subgroups, and the state is providing us with a small amount of money, but how we're going to use that money to target those groups.
Right, so in most cases, the subgroup gets targeted for us as a special education subgroup, so that's not a surprise to anybody. Every time I present data, that's usually a place where we have to put some attention. So the state's providing some targeted money to address subgroups for this year. Fred Shockhart and I are working on it together because the targeted money was set for the elementary schools. So it's 3 elementary schools have that money, so we're going to work on a plan on how we're going to use those funds to help that subgroup. So I put the link on here because really you could go in, it's pretty easy to navigate. You could go in, look at any community, you can look at any school, you can compare schools, you can compare communities. I could sit here and show you all of that,
That's
but I actually
very
think
simple.
there's way more learning and you get way more out of it
Yeah.
if you just do it.
It's very easy, yeah.
And then you can drill down into anything
Yeah.
that you want to drill down to. But the basic premise is that we're in a new model here. And if we learn anything about this new model is one area can pull you down even if your other areas are all here. So if our academics don't get better, even if we're firing all pistons on everything else, we're still gonna be at the lowest piece.
Yeah.
At the same time, we can drive our academics up, but if we stop paying attention to things like suspension or attendance, that's gonna drop down. So you have to kind of keep your eye on the ball
Yeah.
the whole time. Any questions? It's pretty straightforward, right?
It is very.
It's it is what it is at this point, right? It's what, right, it's presented to us, it's not my data, it's not my platform, it's their platform, but this is basically how we're gonna be moving forward with this. So our kids are gonna be taking standardized tests this fall, this spring. That data should be brought to us in the fall, and then the report card will be recreated. Last year was done in December. This year it might be a little bit earlier if the data comes out earlier. It's all contingent on the results, right? Whatever the assessment results are, drive the rest of the data.
So do you know where they came up with this system? I mean,
They built it.
They built it, it's
They built it.
homegrown?
They built it. That's why it took forever for it to all come together. They built it themselves.
I mean, it seems similar to the
Interesting.
sort of Bright Stars sort of model, where you get the 1, 2, 5, and you
Right.
get, but I guess my question is, what are we doing with this data? I mean, the data's great, and I'll drill down myself, because I don't want to keep you up here, but what effect does this data have on our educational outcomes?
So
Because we want to be at a 5.
Yeah, there's a few different things. So one piece that, and I didn't want to get too deep into it because it can get complicated, but there's certain thresholds for different categories. So if in the attendance category, or in one of the other categories, if the threshold is 95%, but you're only at, I'll use graduation. If they're looking for you to be at a certain percentage and you're below that, then what they do is they have a formula that says, for every point you're off that threshold, we're gonna factor in a 0. Like we're gonna average in a 0, which is the lowest score. So it drives your score down if you don't hit the threshold you're at. So one of the things we looked at, I was with Fred and Craig, is we looked at all the places where we were below the threshold and pulling in zeros, because that drives our average down. The other thing we looked at is in each academic area where our subgroups fell, and within those subgroups where the weaknesses were in ELA and math. So they have points, I think there's 4 points or 6 points in ELA, 6 points in math. So we started looking, and it's funny that RIDE gave us money for special education, because in many cases, the subgroup that was the one that we were targeting was special education. So we're looking at where the kids were falling and then how we can support them.
But to.
I guess that doesn't answer my question,
I know.
okay?
So-
So I guess what the simple answer is, does this align with the strategic plan that we have to achieve educational outcomes?
So I'll answer that. Just, it does align. If you look at, and again, I know you just looked at, you got a copy of the strategic
and
plan. So we can share, and if you go online, all of our presentation, but I'll share those, like the presentations we did on curriculum, we did on the RICAS. We've done we did a presentation on each one of the strands of our strategic plan. So this is just my opinion. Like, this community's been good at reporting out on data. We've had some reports, we've seen that. We're actually using the data. There's a lot of work that's being done on curriculum, and making sure that it's aligned, that the teachers have the resources. One of the big issues that we've talked about, I don't know if you were here, Luke, when we talked about it, is that the investment we've made in our ELA curriculum and our math curriculum, that when we purchased these, and I don't know how many years ago that was, but several years ago, we truly felt that these were top-notch curriculum that were or tools that were gonna get us where we need to be. Recently, there's been a study called, organization called Ed Reports, that looks at the Common Core and then looks at the different curriculum materials. And we found out that our materials that we've invested, probably between the two, over $1 million, I would think, between Journeys and was it Go Math, that these aren't aligned to the Common Core. There's a lot of gaps, and we don't have $1 million. So the work that we're doing is, there's a lot of curriculum work that's been going on in terms of making sure that the curriculum that's being taught in our schools is taught with fidelity, but also aligned. But we also have to do something very quickly in terms of filling those gaps and making sure teachers have the resources. So there's been a lot of work that's being done. I don't think that we're a district that's just talking about things now. I think we are doing things. I know we're doing things, and that it's very strategic, looking at the data in every building.
So I can give a more specific example. I think now I understand the question better, right? So we knew that there were some gaps in special education. So we thought about how we provide interventions to students who have needs. And one of the interventions that's available to students in reading is called Wilson. And Wilson is like a phonics-based reading instruction program, like a multi-sensory approach. most of our reading teachers have Wilson training, but a lot of our special educators don't have Wilson training. They're the ones that are working with the kids who have the need for phonics instruction. So as a response to sort of the data that we've collected, we're training a bunch of special educators to get Wilson training so that they can work with their kids using this systematic approach to teaching phonics. So we saw the data, we saw the gap, we saw where the need was. We realized that our teachers didn't have the training to provide the specific kind of instruction that the kids needed, so we're getting them trained so they can provide that instruction. We did the same kind of thing this year with foundations, which is how we teach the basic reading skills in grades K to 2. So we used some of our title money to set up training, and we trained anybody in the district who didn't have foundations training already. We did it in-house. We did it through embedded professional development. We had trainers plan the PD, the teachers came, we gave them professional development, we went through, Tyree was one of them, we went through the whole process. Then at Washington Oak, where we had more seasoned people who had been using foundations for some time, just needed an opportunity to get together and sort of talk about best practices. We put them in a room to let them sort of talk about how they implement foundations in their room to get the best results. So those are really sort of specific examples of how we use the data to try to address where the kids are at. The other thing that we did, and we presented this a little while ago to our ad staff, is we took all our kids in reading and we divided them into cohorts. Kids who are making growth with their proficiency, so they had a good growth score but a low performance score, and kids had a good performance but a low growth. And we plotted the kids into different quadrants so we can kind of keep track of the kids who were low performance but good growth, which means they're heading in the right direction. They're above the 50th percentile on growth, but their performance is not where it needs to be, but they're heading in the right direction, so we're watching them closely. But then we have other kids who are performing very well, but their growth rate is small. And if their growth rate is slow and they're not getting where they need to be, we're gonna see their performance go down as they move up through the grades. So we're watching those kids as well, even though those kids don't fit into the typical sort of struggling learner category, because they're showing that they can do some good work. It's just the growth rate is not where it needs to be. So we're kind of plotting where those kids are and tracking where they're at. Is that a better answer?
No, it's thorough. You know, I didn't mean to get too far into the weeds, and I can get in the
And
weeds
I
on
was
this
actually
more.
avoiding the weeds because I was trying to give like an overview.
Yeah, I just, you know, I just want to make sure that we're, and it sounds like we're using this data to find gaps in our curriculum. And then if we need those resources to fill those gaps to have better outcomes, you know, obviously that's going to be communicated, but
Yeah, one of the things
it sounds
that we
like
did-
this might be a valuable resource.
It's a valuable resource, and the thing is, to me personally, the biggest value is in the academic data, which ties directly back to how we performed on the standardized test. When we look at that data, we actually are tracking our kids grade level and then cohort. So we're looking at kids as a group as they move through grades. But then what we did is we did some initiative mapping to see which kids had full day K and how do they perform in year 1, year 2, year 3. Which kids had journeys, how did they perform? Which kids got Go Math, where did they perform? How did they perform against a group that didn't have Go Math? So that we can see not only how the kids are performing, but how our different initiatives and curriculum are impacting their learning. Because if we see that it's not impacting the learning, then we need to pivot from that and find something that is going to impact them. So there's a lot going on at one time.
So I have one final question, or whatever. The report card seems to me like a public relations kind of thing for the public. If I were an educator, I just could be completely wrong, I would be looking at the data from RICAS, not so much. So I guess my question is this, is this kind of a rating helpful to people like you? Or are you gonna even look at it anyway? Are you just gonna go back to the data and see how our kids
I
perform?
think it's all helpful. I think everything's helpful because it gives us a chance to look at ourselves through a different lens in different ways.
And-
But the data is not new data. It's not like it's different
No,
data
it's
from
not.
our state testing data.
And
It's
is
the same information.
is the star rating basically determined in comparison to schools in Rhode Island as opposed to other schools like in Massachusetts?
Well, everybody has to have a system.
Right.
It doesn't mean they have a 5-star system like we have, but everybody has a system because ESSA has required that.
So but I guess my point is, so
This is a Rhode
a
Island
5-star here in Rhode Island may not be anywhere like the 5-star let's say Massachusetts had a 5-star too. Do you think the same
They would have to
Couldn't
use
tell
the
you if they use
same,
criteria.
they would have to use the same criteria.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to compare apples to apples.
Well,
I think,
I'm just saying, I'm just wondering why
but we
they did
wouldn't
this
know
this
if they
way.
could call it a 5-star, but if they're
Well,
using a
exactly.
different,
So this is based on just Rhode Island, correct?
correct,
Built-
correct.
yeah, it's built here.
I think this is important. We're all evaluated by this, right? People look at this and we're evaluated. So when this data came out, right, we received calls from I received calls from different people saying, "Oh, you did really well," because we have a lot of districts in the state had programs that had 2s and 1s.
Yeah.
We had many programs that are 3s, but if it, because of the one population, if you have one population that is underperforming, it pulls you down. And so we had schools that might be a 5, but because of that population, they were pulled down. And so that, for us, that's everywhere. 100, how many schools had the special education? I think 138 schools in the state had that population identified. And we know that. We've done the work here. We see the data. For us, it's really looking at those interventions. And you had talked to Luke about having the resources. One of the things that we do, all this work that's being done here, all the curriculum work, all the work that Don's talked about that we've presented over the last few months, it's being done without any additional resources other than the resource that we have, people. So like if we had to go out and purchase a new curriculum, we couldn't right now. But we're looking at, there are curriculums out there that the Ed Reports identifies that are free, but we have to look at, okay, but how realistically can we implement that? In the same regard, we have to look at how realistically can we identify materials and resources to fill those gaps of journeys, but to make sure that they're being implemented with fidelity, to have the time and the resources to train people. So that's the challenge that we have right now. But I think we're tackling it. But all the work that we do here is done with the people that we have, because we don't have an influx of dollars, and we can't, you see the budget, you've seen it. Like, we couldn't say, okay, Sarah's needs to find $300,000 because we're going to purchase a new series. We just don't have that capability now. So we're trying to be realistic, but we know that there's a sense of urgency that, when you look at the high school data, it's really about the performance on the ELA and the math. Everything else was a 5. And so we really have to make sure we target that instruction and we look at those kids to move them up a level. That's going to make a huge difference for us. And I think that's what the high school will present when we come back. So this is very important to us because we're evaluated by it, just like the RICAS, whether I agree with these high stakes testing or not, doesn't really matter because the communities look at us that way. So we value it in that regards, when we look at what information can we get from this data to improve student performance. And I think that's something that we take very seriously, but we always can improve that. But we're trying to keep that laser beam focus on improving student performance.
Yeah, if I could go back, I guess one slide I would have included that I didn't, which is in my head now, and it's gonna be hard to describe. It has bands for each subgroup. It has the whole school,
Oh, it
and
does,
each
yeah.
subgroup has a band, and then it has a dotted line that talks about sort of like that first level, that's gonna get you the minimum amount of points, and then the next level, and if the band doesn't hit where it needs to be, you're gonna get the least amount of points. So you can actually look at the subgroups in comparison to where they hit the band. So your whole school can be at this maybe 60th percentile, but if you have a subgroup that's at the 23rd, they're not even hitting the first band, that's gonna drive you down in terms of that subgroup's performance, which, like I said, you're only as strong as the lowest indicator on the piece. That gives you sort of a visual of how they break down.
It seems, it's sort of reminiscent of No Child Left Behind, because that kind of stuff happened in the beginning too, where especially some of our special ed populations and some of our higher performing schools in Coventry got pulled down because of that. So it kind of highlights what you need to really work on if you want your score to go
That's
up.
an all kids agenda.
Yeah, I
And I
know.
think if you look at our
I
strategic
got
plan, it starts with that. So, every child is important, and we have to move those groups forward.
I agree. My final question is, how is science going to get put into this?
I don't know if they're looking to include it with this year's test or the next year's test, but this year's counts in terms of.
No, I know, but how would it be part of the STAR system? Because
They'll have
right
a
now it's
formula
just,
that makes it weighted against the RICAS and the SAT. They'll just include it as
Okay.
an indicator.
Said future years.
because right now, So in the star rating, this SATs aren't part of this, or in what category?
The achievement.
The achievement, because that's a test that they can take. Okay, I
That's
got
the
it. All right.
accountability piece for high school.
Yeah. So I mean, most of the categories are achievement. There's only a couple of self-reporting ones, right? I mean,
Well,
like
that's what I'm
graduation
saying.
and,
When we look at our RICAS results,
Yeah.
it really drives this.
exactly.
So,
Okay, that's
you
what
know,
I was thinking, yeah.
When we went through all of those,
Yeah,
all of that, it basically told us sort of where this was gonna all fall together. So when we got our results, I mean, sure, we'd
wasn't a
like to see
surprise.
more 4s and 5s.
But it wasn't a surprise.
We knew already where our data was.
okay.
It wasn't gonna suddenly improve because of a different reporting system. But I will say, everything's new this year, and everything came out late. So the RICAS results came out late, and then this report came out late, and now we're already preparing for the next assessment. So we didn't have a lot of time with the data from those pieces to be able to do a lot with it. We are doing, we have a whole system to try to address it, but in best case scenario, if you give an assessment in the spring, if we get the results early fall, that gives us 6 months of time to respond to that. We didn't get really anything until January, and we're already ramping up for the next test at that point.
Don,
Yes.
thank you. You must sleep with this. No? You sure? Thanks for the short presentation,
I
Don.
tried.
I do have one more question. I know they're going to kill me. I have one more question, Donna, and I know people are going to kill me. Is RIDE saying anything about the dismal performance of the middle schools? I mean, they seem to, I mean, if you just look at the star ratings, they are the lowest. So what's the plan? I know we have plans here in Coventry. You know,
I think, you know, the first thing that they are acknowledging that it exists.
Yeah.
I went to a meeting about math, and they had schools from all over the state.
Yeah.
And we were all talking about our data and our results and what we were taking away from it. And the middle school conversations, particularly around math, was happening at every single table because a lot of people are seeing a cliff in 6th and 7th grade. That it's not just us. I'm
I
not
know.
saying it's acceptable.
Well, it's across the state. You can see it's only 5% of the schools had 5 stars.
But
It's
if you
just not-
remember from that other
goes right down.
presentation, that's true, but our schools actually did well in
Right.
growth.
Right,
So we had
exactly.
70% of our kids actually have above average growth. So we're hoping that next year and the year after, that translates into higher proficiency. Because their growth rate is higher
Right.
than their peer group.
So we'll hope for the best.
Yeah, we hope for it.
Thank you so much, really. Any questions from the public for Don? You're gonna just, no? Yeah. I know, we were supposed to be faster than that, huh? Sorry. Hey, a lot
Hey,
of
you
good
know,
questions.
Can't
you
get it
know?
right all the time, right?
Anyway,
It's all good.
Okay.
All good.
moving on to our universal state pre-K grant.
Right.
Mr. Levis.
So, and it kind of ties into our last conversation because a lot of the work that we're doing is with early childhood. You know, we recently, I think we talked about last school committee, we were the only school district in the state to receive the Early Childhood Champion Award from Rhode Island Kids Count, which I think is pretty significant because it recognizes all the work that's being done pre-K to grades 2. And I want to just, Denise isn't able to be here tonight. Her uncle is the retiring chief of police in Warwick. So they're having, I guess,
Celebration.
something tonight for him. But so we are going to be applying, I know she talked about this previously, for a state pre-K grant. We're applying for 2 classrooms, which will be close. And Sarah's been doing the budget. Denise has been working, I know she worked with Don and met with Christine Mandisi at Washington Oak. She met with Kelly. There's some requirements for the teachers and the teaching assistants that go above what we typically have in terms of expectations. So we need to work that out, which will work out. But it's about, like I said, $390,000 that we can receive to run 2 classrooms. We're in a really good position. A lot of these funds are going to be targeted for the private preschools. So there's going to be a lot of ramping up that they're going to need to do to get to where, they meet the expectations of a state pre-K. We'll have some pretty exciting news. The Bright Stars came out recently and did the review. And I think at the next school committee meeting, probably have some pretty exciting news about that. So I just wanted to give the community an update in the committee that grant is due on March 28th, I believe. And so there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think it's a great opportunity for this community. It's all based on lottery. I think there's a higher number that the state wants, about 20 students in these classrooms. But it's like I said, it's a great opportunity. It levels the playing field for individuals. The difference is that these are 6-hour programs. So, but I think it aligns with our strategic plan and the emphasis on early learning and opportunities. And I'm very impressed with the work that's been going on, because that creates a solid foundation. Remember, we were the last school district to have full day K, and while everybody else had all day K and we didn't, that half a day had to impact the performance of our students. And we've seen that. We've seen the ramp up already in terms of the performance. We presented that data of looking at what that full day has done. So I just wanted to share that with the committee. So I think that's exciting, and I know it's a grant. We have to receive it. But we are, putting our best foot forward and applying for it. And I think we have a really good position. I think winning that award from Kids Count, everybody uses their data. I think that's definitely going to help us. Plus, we have incredible people. We have incredible programs. And like I said, I think there'll be some exciting news in the next couple of weeks about that. So,
Thank you. Any questions for the superintendent? Any questions from the public for Mr. Levis? Okay, thank you. Yeah, you're up again, superintendent's report.
so I will be quick with this. The first issue was just, we had a, Sonatrol was working on the alarms at the high school last week, correct? Last week? I think it was Monday. And I know I'd sent out an email, the lockdown alarm went off. So immediately, Ms. Maycumber sent out, through the intercom that it was a, false alarm. Officer Pacheco, as soon as it went off, he radioed lockdown for the police. Within 2 minutes, I thought that Ms. Maycumber was embellishing a little bit, but within 2 minutes, there were 4 patrol cars there responding. So again, we've been fortunate that this is probably within the district, probably the third or fourth time that we've had like a false lockdown. Many places don't have the opportunity to practice, but every time we've been able to debrief and, I think this is just again, a positive is just a response.
That's what I was gonna say. You gotta look at the positive side of
Right.
this. Is that,
And there was a communication, and we communicated with the parents and let them know what had transpired, but there definitely was a positive that our police are incredible partners. And here again, once again, just to see the response that they had. So that's the first part. Some exciting news, I think. I've been working with the Kent County Prevention Coalition, and Dana Devana, her husband Chris runs and they run the Coventry Youth Soccer. Dana is the substance abuse task force coordinator. I met with her this week, and there's a lot of resources. We've had, we all know about the issues around vaping in our middle school, definitely in our high school. She has a presentation. Mr. Cowart's wife actually reported on her presentations that she does to the middle school. So we're going to have her come out. Mr. Lucian, I've coordinated or connected Mr. Lucian with her. So she has a lot of resources that we're going to bring to our students and into our families. She also has some resources that I think will definitely help out our high school too. So she's going to come before us, and I'd like you to introduce her to the committee and to the community. But I think that's, again, trying to connect with our community partners. The other thing is that Mr. Wilson and I talked about one of the things we'd like to try to do, and it's nothing, we haven't invented this, but there was, we talked about doing professional development for our business community, for our community at large, and I think it's a good way to reach out and be a resource. One of the things that there's a program out there where families that have children in the spectrum that are autistic, they struggle sometimes going to restaurants, going to community businesses, and there are programs out there where you bring in these community partners And we could do it at the Naughty Oak Room on a Monday morning, have a breakfast, and have a professional training, giving them some insight in terms of what autism is. And, a lot of times people on the other end, they don't know how to interact. They want to interact. They want to help a family feel comfortable going in. They don't know what to do. So we'd like to put something together, open it up to all of our businesses in the community and other partners that individuals that think would benefit, and do like a 2-hour breakfast, an hour and 45-minute breakfast at the Naughty Oak Room, and have again, some presentation, but also some question and answers. And, we thought that would be something that would be good to start with. And we'd like to do maybe a regular series, because we have, I always say to people, we're a powerful force. We have 750 employees. We're a $75 million organization. And unfortunately, people look at us as just taking, but we have so much to offer. There's so much good that we have and expertise that we have. So we thought this is a good way to start. So this is something we'd like to do, and maybe plan for when we know there will be no chance of snow. So maybe May, looking at that. So I just wanted to share that with the committee, maybe July. And then I had on here new school committee appointment. All that was I knew Mr. Murray had won the election, but I wasn't sure when you were going to be sworn in. So I wanted to put that on the agenda. I actually sent him an email and said, hey, can you let me know? But he was actually sworn in today, so it's kind of a moot point. But that was to let the community know that, hey, if it was going to happen next Monday night, to let the community know, so anybody that wanted to go to support you could go. And that's it. I'm done.
Any questions for the superintendent from the committee? Anything from the public? Seeing none, we can go to the chairperson's report. And the only thing I wanted to report on is that on Saturday, March 9th, which was last Saturday, there was a meeting between town and school department folks to talk about the F-20 budget. Myself, Dave Florio, we had decided would represent the school committee, and from the town council side, it was Carrie McGee and Mr. Cody, and also our business manager, their business manager, Mr. Levis, and acting manager, Ed Wazika. And I just want to report out that I thought it was a very good meeting in the following way. I think what we're really trying to do is build trust between both parties and to be as transparent with each other as possible. And I think that we did make some steps in that direction on Saturday. We met for about a couple of hours, and I think we all went away thinking that some of the walls have come down. And so I'm hopeful that if we meet again, or hopefully we will meet again, more of that trust building and relation building will happen. And I think that's all I really wanted to say. I don't know if anybody had any questions from the committee as to what we did.
It was a very good meeting. It was very positive. Sarah did a great job. Sarah, it's amazing that Sarah has an awesome relationship with the treasurer from the town, John Arnett. And the town seems to get it right now. They seem to understand the dilemma that we're in as a school department. And we left on a very positive note, where we're going to work together to try to fix whatever's wrong with the budgets. And Sarah's a key player in this, and so is Mr. Arnett. When you can get the two financial people there stressing the importance of education and of working together, that helps quite a bit. And when you have the town manager and the superintendent in a non-confrontational relationship working together and encouraging the members of the council and the school committee to try to form a resolution where everyone can make a rational decision, it's pretty important. And congratulations, Sarah. You really, and Mr. Levis, yeah, you You guys, you hit a home run in doing this. Thank you.
Can
Any
I,
other comments,
Yeah,
Joe?
I know, I just want to echo that,
Yeah.
as a new member, having sat on that side very recently, and having gone through last year's budget, many of us may remember that. It was very contentious with the town. There wasn't a lot of love on both sides. I stood up at one of those meetings, which is part of the reason I'm here tonight. But I think it's important, there's been some, I guess, talk in the community, some members saying that this is behind closed doors, this should be open session. My feeling is this is how work gets done, that if we don't have these work sessions where a few people from the committee go with the administrators behind closed doors and grind it out and sort of make the sausage, as they say, we're never going to move forward in this town. And I think the more that the town council understands the importance of the schools and what they bring as far as economic development, as far as creating a sense of community, we're going to start working as one town and start moving forward. And I'm hoping that starts with this year. And that, we're going to go through another tough budget cycle, but I think working together, we can sort of say to the community, we are working together, we're functioning. And I think that's the first thing we need to show, that we can function as a town and move forward in tough times. And then we can rectify from there. So I want to thank you for your efforts and being proactive. And I do want to thank Sarah as well. I know that she's had a big part of this. And she's garnered a lot of trust on the other side. So thank you.
Any other comments from the committee on this? Anything
Nope,
from the
I
public?
thought it was a good idea,
Yep.
and I still think it's a good idea that, we've got to start working with the town council. We've got to get together. We've got to be in the same room. Last year was just horrific. It really was. And,
There've been a lot of contentions here.
oh yeah, but last year I think was just like the icing on the cake. It was like, this has got to stop. So I think that we're moving in the right direction.
I think it was a great first step. I really do. Anything from the public? Yep.
I just want to say, being a resident for many years and being an employee for many years, I think that the public in general, whether the parents or teachers, employees or grandparents, have said the nastiness on both sides have to stop.
Yeah.
So what happens in isolation is the school department meets. So, Sarah meets with Craig, meets with principals, meets with department heads, and they all hammer out a school budget. On the opposite side, you have the town just meeting with the town and all their department heads. And I was actually very disappointed to see a few Facebook posts, and people who should be wanting people to work together, a school committee member, a town council member, saying that it wasn't transparent. That's what everybody's been asking for, get the two sides together to talk. And sometimes if you have five on each side, the conversation is not as honest as it needs to be. So I wasn't there, I don't know what happened. But I do know that's what people have been asking for, that both sides have to talk. You can't have a school budget in isolation and then have a town budget in isolation. The sides need to get together. And I think during sessions like this, in public, if anyone has a problem with that, they should speak up rather than resorting to Facebook and doing all the other things, because that's where the problems start from. It gets that contention going. So I'm hearing that people think it's positive. I've looked at tons of Facebook posts with parents, senses of Coventry, all the other stuff that goes up, and people are glad they're working together. But there also seems to be, I think it wasn't upfront and transparent. I'm just saying, I think it's what's needed. However conversations get done, you start small, you get larger. But if both sides aren't communicating, will you feel the freedom to be able to be honest? And you can yell and scream at each other with the public watching. That needs to happen too. That's how things get resolved. It gets tough before it gets easier. I think of the contract negotiation. They're done privately for a reason. But it's not pretty at times. You have to get to the other side. So that's just my 2 cents. I want to thank both sides for whatever happened in there, happening, and ask people if they have issues. Be transparent with yourself and say them, here in this forum or the town council forum. But I don't like the indication that there's, sneakiness going on. I think it's good that the sides are talking.
Great.
Madam
Thanks.
Chair, may I say something real
Sure,
quick?
sure.
For the record, because so the public knows and the camera knows, our administrative teams have been working together on this budget from the start. It's very important to know that there has been teamwork from our school department and the town administration from the start of this budget. We encourage that. That's what we pay them the big bucks for. And that's what we rely on their extensive resumes for, to get this work done. put differences aside, work toward a common goal, getting a town budget passed. Very important that these departments work together, town side, school side, as a team. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public before we move on? We're good? All right. Then I guess we're to citizens' comments. Are there any citizens who would like to comment or ask any questions? Sure.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to make a few comments to the members of the school committee, superintendent of schools, and also our assistant superintendent, as I prepare to retire as library media specialist in Coventry Public Schools. I planned to attend the meeting last week when my resignation was announced for the purpose of retirement, but I was unable to do so because of family medical emergency. I will be brief, but I think it's incumbent upon me as a professional to share some observations and suggestions that may assist you in delivering the quality of education our children not only deserve, but desperately need in order to become culturally literate, critically thinking, and productive adults. This is especially important at this time as you work on next year's school budget and also in light of the report on school accountability in regard to middle schools. We have all heard and read about how Rhode Island students as a whole lag behind Massachusetts in reading assessments. In Rhode Island, Coventry ranks only in the middle. Most alarming are the trends in Coventry with declining proficiency in reading. Now, Rhode Island has been looking to Massachusetts as a model for education due to its student accomplishments achieved with a long-term vision over 20 years. A most noteworthy fact is that Massachusetts recognizes the value of school libraries in developing literacy skills and has taken legislative action in order to ensure equity for their students. The Legislative Special Commission on School Libraries in Massachusetts was created in July 2014, and their report was just published about a year ago. The #1 recommendation of the Massachusetts School Library Study, which was created because of the legislature, was to guarantee access to school libraries and school librarians. And the #1 way to do this, according to their recommendation, is to ensure that every public school in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a school library and a certified school librarian. Reading proficiency is not something that develops only within the confines of the classroom. True proficiency, especially for students at risk, is developed through enhanced independent reading, especially at home and during free time. Unless a student can develop an interest in reading by reading about what interests them, independent reading is stifled. Unless a professional who cares and has the skills to assist in identifying and selecting appropriate materials, that student is left adrift. Unless there is a library containing reading level appropriate materials for teaching young readers, they will have little to read. This is an especially important factor in families who do not take their students to the public library or buy them books. According to the recent study, the last time Survey Works polled students about going to the public library, only 17% of Coventry students ever visited the public library once a year. Now, I am personally aware of two groups of students in Coventry who are at a clear disadvantage. First, our middle school students have no professionally trained library media specialist to assist them in selecting reading resources and have a collection that is beginning to be outdated due to no new books being added and no outdated books being weeded out. After 1 year of no collection development, students are just out of luck when they want the new books in the series they love, new books by their favorite author, or books they want to read like their friends but can't afford to buy. New books on how to code, biographies of women engineers are not available to our middle school students. We maybe say we're trying to encourage computer science, but where are the new reading resources on this topic? Are we really doing so? The gaps are only going to continue to grow. Our middle school students are not eligible to borrow books from other school libraries because according to Rhode Island law, a library must have a professionally certified librarian in order for our students to be eligible to do that. The second group that is at risk, students at Black Rock Elementary School, have had no new books this school year because because I was told as library media specialist in August that there was no money for new books. Based on the collection I see, with outdated books and books in poor condition, this may have been the case for many years. According to the American Association of School Libraries, strong libraries build strong students. Studies after study prove this. And a well-stocked library staffed by a professional librarian provides the scaffolding for reading success. We all know the American School Library Association reports that school libraries provide the blueprint today for teaching students research skills, digital citizenship, safety online, and information communication skills. Yet here in Coventry, home to the largest middle school in the state, there is no professional librarian and no functioning library in terms of collection development or information skills instruction. The students have spent the school year deprived of virtually all the resources and benefits that a professional staff librarian can provide. I am sure the elimination of a professional librarian position was done with one intention, to cut costs. But the costs will be borne by our middle school students, by the adverse impact on our school system, and the reputation of the town of Coventry. However well-intentioned it was misguided and a mistake, and in the long run counterproductive. Next year I will be retired, and I have no personal stake in whether the middle school library is staffed by a certified library media specialist. But as a professional and a citizen of the state who really cares, I urge you to reconsider your commitment to a very important segment of our student body, our middle school students. And lastly, the development of a Coventry K-12 library media curriculum has just begun, spearheaded by Don Cowart, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction. But it's going to have a huge gap. Will it be a K-5 and a 9-12 curriculum, as there is no one to continue work on the middle school curriculum or to deliver it? What other curriculum do we have in Coventry that omits representation for grades 6 through 8 from its curriculum design? Aren't our middle school students important enough? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'd like to schedule the next meeting. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the next meeting of this Coventry School Committee be scheduled for Thursday, March 28th at 6 p.m. at Coventry Town Hall.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. And is there a motion to adjourn? Looks like 8:15.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the meeting be adjourned at 8:15 p.m.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everyone, for attending.